Good afternoon, I'm Leila Masimova and you're watching AnewZ. Here's the top stories for today. Markets slide after Trump's tariff concerns sent U.S. shares tumbling. A helicopter crashes into New York's Hudson River, all 6 aboard killed. The fourth Antalya Diplomacy Forum kicks off today in Türkiye, gathering world leaders and top diplomats. Global markets are tumbling as U.S. President Donald Trump ramps up tariffs on China's imports, reigniting tensions with Beijing and wiping out recent stock market gains. The uncertainty is raising fears of a recession and shaking investor confidence.
Markets around the world face sharp losses this week as trade tensions between the United States and China escalated once again. A brief rally on Wall Street faded quickly after US President Donald Trump announced steep new tariffs on Chinese goods, raising some import taxes as high as 145%. China responded with its own round of tariffs, now reaching 84% on certain American products. The tit-for-tat moves renewed investor fears of a prolonged trade war with no clear resolution in sight. In the United States, stock markets fell sharply. The tech-focused NASDAQ dropped over 4%, while the broader S&P 500 slid by 3.5%. The index is now down about 15% from its recent peak, nearing what analysts consider bear market territory. These losses came just a day after the market posted its biggest one-day gain since 2008, highlighting just how volatile the environment has become.
Markets are reflecting, one, some major exhaustion, and two, just what they're hearing in the news, which is somewhat good to hear in the moment you hear it, but long-term not adding to actual stability. All of the tariff news, all of the auction news we hear, even the good bits are now getting drowned out by the fact that the markets are starting to price in any good bit of news can be taken away in a tweet, and any bad day can be turned around just as easily. That instability makes prices weaker.
Asian markets also suffered a sharp decline. Japan's Nikkei 225 plunged 5% in early Friday trading. South Korea's Kospi index also fell sharply, down nearly 2% at the open. Meanwhile, the European Union has chosen to delay its planned tariffs on US goods, following Washington's 90-day pause on some levies. At the same time, new inflation data in the US showed that consumer prices are easing, with core inflation now at 2.8%. That brings it closer to the central bank's target, but officials say the path ahead for interest rates is unclear due to the trade situation. President Trump claimed the US is collecting $2 billion per day from tariffs, but Treasury data shows only $8.75 billion was collected in March, just $2 billion more than the same month last year. Economists also note that average US tariff rates are now at their highest levels in over a century. Amid all this, financial analysts are warning of a rising risk of recession, with Goldman Sachs estimating the likelihood of that happening is at 45%.
The White House came out with a clarification on tariffs on China's goods, saying that the rate currently stands at 145%. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that he's raising tariffs to 125%, but the administration says that is in addition to a 20% tariff that had been previously announced regarding fentanyl smuggling into the U.S. And in a cabinet meeting, Trump acknowledged that the transition regarding the tariffs and markets is difficult.
We had a big day yesterday. There'll always be transition difficulty, but we had in history, it was the biggest day in history, the markets. So we're very, very happy with the way the country is running. We're trying to get the world to treat us fairly. This is something that should have been done 25 years ago, and it wasn't. Should have been done 40 years ago, and it wasn't. But no president was willing to take it on, but you had to. It's not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable.
Concerns about China's influence in Panama, the deployment of U.S. troops to the canal, the pause on tariffs and President Trump's announcement of direct talks with Iran about its nuclear program. These were the key issues covered in President Donald Trump's cabinet meeting on Thursday.
From trade tariffs to Iran's nuclear program and to the Panama Canal, US President Donald Trump discussed a wide range of critical issues at his cabinet meeting on Thursday after a whirlwind few weeks. US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth visited Panama and signed a memorandum to send troops to the canal with the aim to push out China.
Last night, we, along with Panama, are pushing him out, sir. And so we had a very successful trip there. President Molino sends his regards, very complimentary of the U.S. as he's a great ally, and I think they want the Communist Chinese out. And with our troops there partnering with their forces, we've got a chance to push them all the way out, sir.
We've moved a lot of troops to Panama and filled up some areas that we used to have, and we didn't have any longer, but we have them now. And I think it's in very good control, right?
Yes, sir.
In a bold diplomatic move, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced significant talks with Iran set for this weekend about Tehran's nuclear program. However, Iran says they will participate in indirect discussions on Saturday.
An important meeting, thanks to you, is going to happen on Saturday. For the first time in a long time, there'll be direct talks between Ambassador Woodcock and a top-level leader in Iran. We hope that'll lead to peace. You've been very clear what Iran is never going to have is a nuclear weapon, and I think that's what led to this meeting, and we'll wait for him to come back from it, and we're hopeful about that. I would also say that we are receiving, and I think the Department of Homeland Security can confirm this, historic cooperation from countries all over the world. Number one, in taking back their citizens. Every country in the world has to take back people that are illegally in another country, and we have countries that refuse to do it or will kind of ignore our calls.
Meanwhile, billionaire Elon Musk, who's been tasked with cutting costs in the federal government, projected significant savings, telling the cabinet that efforts to reduce waste and fraud could lead to a monumental saving of $150 billion next year.
I'm excited to announce that we anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. And I mean, and some of it is just absurd, like people getting unemployment insurance who haven't been born yet. I mean, I think anyone can appreciate whether, I mean, come on, that's just crazy.
And turning to domestic issues, Trump also addressed the fluctuating price of eggs, with Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins providing insight into the market.
And eggs are down.
Eggs are
big,
down.
right?
Yes,
big.
Yes, sir. Wholesale prices. Retail will come. Yeah. Easter is the Super Bowl for eggs. So, you know, there may be a little fluctuation, but no, we feel really good about it. Thank you.
As President Trump and his administration continue to implement their policies, attention is focused on the next developments in U.S. foreign relations, economic strategies and international diplomacy.
Let's now go to our correspondent Obi Shambandar in Washington, D.C. for more on the news that U.S. President Donald Trump is sending troops to Panama and about Washington's concerns over China's presence in the canal.
President Donald Trump has announced that the U.S. has already moved a number of troops to the Central American nation of Panama in order to secure the strategic Panama Canal. The canal is vital for American commerce and is an important trade link serving as a shortcut between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The canal's strategic value is not only economic. The U.S. views the canal as a critical national security asset and a logistical backbone for American trade and for the projection of American military power. During a cabinet meeting with President Trump on Thursday, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth told the president that a historic deal was signed with Panama that will now allow American vessels priority unhindered movement through the Panama Canal. Secretary Hegseth also said that he signed a memorandum of understanding with Panama's security minister that would allow the presence of American troops and the reopening of an old U.S. base, Fort Sherman, with an accompanying naval and air station that would operate jointly with Panama forces. Hegseth told the president that China over the years has had too much influence over the Panama Canal and that former President Barack Obama had, quote, let them creep in. Secretary of Defense Hegseth said that the U.S. will now work along with Panama to ensure that the Chinese are pushed out. The Trump administration had previously warned Panamanian authorities that they could face grave repercussions by allowing the Chinese government greater access and control over the management of the Panama Canal, which the U.S. had built in 1904. The U.S. ceded the canal back to Panama control in 1999. Around 40% of U.S. container traffic passes through the canal each year, alongside about 100 American naval warships, a number that would surely increase if a war began in the Pacific. A Chinese company controls 2 port entrances into the Panama Canal. In late March, Beijing held up the sale of the company that controls those entrances to a group led by U.S. investing giant BlackRock. Washington is concerned that China is using dual-use, ostensibly civilian-run shipping companies that can be quickly used for military purposes or even sabotaged by the Chinese military in case of a Pacific conflict with the U.S. For now, it seems that relations between the U.S. and Panama have been mended following the Secretary of Defense Hegseth's trip to the country. The Trump White House is still very much focused in ensuring that no Chinese-controlled interests have the ability to oversee and manage the Panama Canal, given the billions of dollars that the U.S. paid to build it. Ube Shabander, Washington, D.C., AnewZ.
A sightseeing flight ended in tragedy when a helicopter crashed into the Hudson River in New York. All 6 people on board were killed. Officials say the victims included a Spanish family and the pilot.
God, oh my gosh.
A deadly helicopter crash in the Hudson River in New York on Thursday killed all 6 people on board, including 3 children. The aircraft, carrying a Spanish family of 5 and their pilot, went down shortly after takeoff, according to officials. The aircraft was a Bell 206 operated by New York helicopters, took off from the downtown Manhattan heliport at 1 minute to 3 in the afternoon. Moments later, it lost control near the George Washington Bridge and crashed upside down into the river near Hoboken, New Jersey, at around 3:15. Emergency services said they responded within minutes.
According to the manifest, aboard the helicopter were 6 people, 1 pilot, 2 adults, and 3 children. NYPD divers pulled 4 people from the crash site, and FDNY divers recovered an additional 2. Immediate life-saving measures were undertaken on the vessels at the scene, as well as the adjoining pier. 4 victims were pronounced dead on scene, and 2 more were removed to local area hospitals, where sadly both succumbed to their injuries. Names are being withheld at this time, pending family notification.
The Federal Aviation Administration confirms the model of the aircraft and says the National Transportation Safety Board will lead the investigation into the cause of the crash. So far, no official cause has been identified.
Argentina's major unions have launched a 24-hour strike, bringing transport and public services to halt. The move is in protest against President Javier Milei's austerity measures to cut government spending.
Trains, flights and port activity came to a halt in Argentina, and banks, schools and government offices were closed on Thursday in the capital. Public hospitals and government agencies were running, however, only on skeleton staffing. Workers staged a major 24-hour strike in Buenos Aires against President Javier Milei's austerity measures. Unions are demanding the rehiring of laid-off workers, renewed wage talks, and a halt to privatization plans. Some Argentinians aren't pleased that health facilities aren't running at full capacity, while others support the move.
Since there are no trains, I have to change for another public transport. But the right to strike is also a right of the workers. And I believe that there should be more strikes, because the situation with this government is unsustainable.
The truth is that it's the worst thing that can happen, that they make things difficult for the workers in every area, from health to safety to the self-employed. So the truth is a problem for everyone, because I've heard that even hospitals have minimal staff and I have to bring my grandmother to the hospital and I don't know what I'm going to do.
On Wednesday, thousands of pensioners protested outside Congress ahead of the strike. They've seen their pension funds slashed after Milley's cuts to benefits. Critics say Milley's approach to cutting government spending has worsened social inequality and ongoing hardships, and they say his actions have moved the country into a recession.
The European Union suspended its retaliatory tariff plan for American goods for 90 days. The decision out of Brussels comes after Donald Trump also posed most of the higher tariff rates for 90 days.
The European Union will pause its plan to counter tariffs on U.S. imports after President Donald Trump temporarily eased some of the steep duties he had recently imposed. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced on Thursday. The EU had been preparing to hit back with tariffs on $23.25 billion worth of American goods in response to Trump's 25% taxes on steel and aluminium. Von der Leyen said on the social media platform X that the EU would hold off on the countermeasures for 90 days while discussions continue. EU spokesperson Olaf Gill said details of the 90-day suspension are still being worked out, but stressed that the EU remains open to dialogue.
Our approach hasn't changed. We're preparing for all outcomes. All our instruments are on the table. We want to talk to the Americans. We want to achieve deals that benefit both sides. We've offered them 0 for 0 on industrial products and goods. We believe we can reach all sorts of beneficial outcomes from both sides that would avoid the types of tariffs that we believe are harmful and counterproductive. So we're continuing all our preparations and we will continue to talk to our member states, talk to our industry, and we remain ready to engage in a meaningful way with the US.
The bloc is still reviewing possible responses to U.S. car tariffs and other 10% duties that remain in place. The coming weeks will be crucial in determining whether the pause leads to lasting de-escalation or renewed trade tensions.
The talks on a minerals agreement between Ukraine and the U.S. are set to begin on Friday in Washington.
Technical consultations between the United States and Ukraine on a prospective minerals agreement will begin in Washington on Friday. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Ola Stefanishina confirmed. The discussions come as US President Donald Trump seeks a bilateral deal granting the US access to Ukraine's mineral resources, positioning it as part of a broader strategy to help end Russia's war on Ukraine. Trump has also framed the deal as a potential way to recoup military aid provided to Kyiv, despite that support not being issued as a loan. Speaking in Brussels on Thursday, Stefanishina underscored that any agreement must align with Ukraine's current commitments.
One thing I can confirm for sure that nothing in the agreement can be negotiated with Ukraine in a way that will undermine the existing commitments and obligations Ukraine has, including the financial ones within Ukraine facility, macro-financial assistance, IMF cooperation. This is something that is not subjected to any negotiating format, and having said that, it means that the appropriate adjustments has to be done into the format of the agreement later on.
According to a Ukrainian government document dated April 8th, Kyiv has set aside $2.7 million for consulting services to safeguard national interests and develop a formal negotiating position. The Trump administration has reportedly expanded the scope of its original proposal, seeking preferential access to Ukraine's mineral reserves.
The fourth Antalya Diplomacy Forum kicks off today in Türkiye, gathering world leaders, top diplomats and key international stakeholders under the central theme, reclaiming diplomacy in a fragmented world. Held under the patronage of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and hosted by Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the three-day summit aims to revive multilateral dialogue and cooperation amid growing global tensions. Around 4,000 people will take part, including President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan, who arrived on Turkey on a working visit at the invitation of President Erdogan. Our Katie Wilson is in Antalya, has more about the forum.
Good afternoon from Antalya. I'm here for the 4th edition of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. Now, the official opening is 3 p.m. Turkish time today, that's 4 p.m. Baku time, but it doesn't mean things haven't gotten started already. There's been plenty of discussions this morning, so we've had a panel on peace in the Middle East. Now, President Aliyev arrived in Antalya yesterday, and he's already had talks with the host of the overall event, that's Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and also a meeting with the President of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, Ersin Tatar. Now, the theme of this year's forum is reclaiming diplomacy in a fragmented world. Now, this acknowledges the diplomatic changes that have taken place over the past year in diplomacy's new place in the world. And the key of this forum, one of the key aims, is to reinforce diplomacy as a means amid these global divisions and amid this changing world. Now, there's plenty to look forward to this afternoon, such as panels and roundtables on the role of AI, as well as combating terrorism. And looking ahead to tomorrow, there's plenty of interesting things happening that concern our region. So this includes a talk between the Organization of Turkic States, as well as a panel involving the foreign ministers of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. So those countries in the South Caucasus there. So that's one to definitely look out for. Now, AnewZ is going to be here throughout the whole conference. I'm going to be bringing you the latest updates, so stay tuned and I'll be bringing you more from Antalya.
The United States has reaffirmed its support for Azerbaijan's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity. The message of support came in a letter from U.S. President Donald Trump to Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev on the occasion of Nowruz. In the letter sent on April 10, Trump congratulated the Azerbaijani people, describing Nowruz as a symbol of peace, prosperity and renewal. He praised a strong partnership between the two countries and expressed optimism about future cooperation. Trump also acknowledged Azerbaijan's support for Israel and its role in promoting regional peace, underscoring the strategic importance of U.S.-Azerbaijan relations. Now more on President Donald Trump's letter to his Azerbaijani counterpart and U.S.-Azerbaijani relations. Join me now live from California's Professor Brenda Schaefer from U.S. Naval Postgraduate School. Thank you for joining us, Professor.
Thank you.
Well, there are a number of things to consider. President Donald Trump in his letter says that Azerbaijan and the U.S. can accomplish great things in the years to come. What are your thoughts, Professor?
Yeah, I think in the almost more than 30 years that I've been following U.S.-Azerbaijan relations, this is probably the best or one of the best letters ever from a U.S. president to Azerbaijan. I think it's very important because they use the words territorial integrity without some sort of condition, but as in many years we've heard over the years, and talking about future cooperation. And of course, even bringing in this trilateral cooperation between Israel, Azerbaijan, and the United States, which is probably the first time I think mentioned in one of these official letters.
He also specifically expressed his appreciation for Azerbaijan's support and friendship for Israel. What are the prospects of trilateral cooperation format involving these three countries?
Right. So, one of the first foreign leaders to visit the White House after Trump's inauguration, and then already a second visit, is the Prime Minister of Israel. There are very close strategic relations between the United States and specifically with the Trump administration and Israel. And I think the administration very much appreciates Azerbaijan's close relations with Israel and sees that it could be very valuable to have trilateral cooperation. I mean, we're already seeing, yesterday Azerbaijan hosting the security talks between Turkey and Israel and Baku. We're seeing this very important diplomatic role. And over the years, you've had, when Russia and the United States and their emissaries wanted to speak, you've had the meetings held in Baku. So I think the administration sees a very important role for Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan has ties almost with every country and to every direction. And I think also the emerging peace treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan helps the United States to see Azerbaijan not only in the context of the conflict, but see that the conflict is something that's now finished, and actually to look at Azerbaijan as a middle power with a lot of convening ability due to its connections with almost all the different blocs.
Thank you so much, Professor Schaefer. So grateful.
My pleasure.
A high-level meeting between Israeli and Turkish delegations was held to discuss diplomatic and security issues, according to the office of the Israeli Prime Minister. They posted on X saying that their delegation was led by National Security Council Director Zahi Hanekbi. Senior officials from the Ministry of Defense and the security services also took part in the delegation. The office thanked Azerbaijan and its President Ilham Aliyev for hosting important talks. Turkey and Somalia have signed an agreement to explore and produce hydrocarbons in 3 of Somalia's offshore fields. The Turkish Petroleum Corporation and the Somali Petroleum Authority say they are strengthening ties between the two nations. Turkish Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar and Somali Petroleum Minister Dahir Shir Mohammed formalized a deal in Ankara. Bayraktar says the surveys are so far 78% complete. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe adopted a resolution condemning Georgia's democratic backsliding. The Georgian government rejected the resolution, calling it politically biased. Our Nini Nikolashvili brings more from Tbilisi.
The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has adopted a sharply worded resolution condemning what is described as Georgia's democratic backsliding, with an overwhelming majority of 89 votes to 3. The resolution paints a grim picture. It accuses the ruling Georgian Dream Party of dismantling the democratic institutions, restricting media and civil society, and suppressing the opposition voices. The Assembly voiced a deep concern over what is referred as foreign agent law, like linked to Russian-style legislation aimed at silencing critical NGOs and independent media. The resolution also condemned the recent legislative amendments to Georgia's electoral code and the media laws. The PACE criticized the Georgian delegation's complete absence in Strasbourg, which withdrew after their credentials were ratified subject to conditions in January, calling it the rejection of democratic dialogue. In response, Georgian Dream representatives rejected the resolution's findings, calling it political biased and based on misinformation promoted by the opposition and certain NGOs. The government stated that Georgia remains committed to democratic principles and argued that recent reforms were necessary for the regional security and transparency. The representatives of Georgian government also rejected accusations and criticism about the foreign agent law, insisting that this is modeled after the Western practices. Despite the strong language of resolution, it is non-binding and based on the previous statements from Georgia's delegation to PACE and the Georgian government. It came now with surprise or did not cause any concern for the Georgian government, which remains very resolute in the face of PACE criticism. This is Nina Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
The second Sustainable Construction Summit was held at the Sibris Resort in Baku, co-organized by the Azerbaijan Industrial Safety Association and PMD projects under the theme People, Planet, Prosperity.
When we think about sustainable construction, what comes to mind? Concrete, steel, and lots of green. But no one truly thinks that these projects are actually building the future of the planet. In this summit, we're discussing how to serve both the environment and the economy of the future.
Can a balance between environmental responsibility and economic development truly be achieved? The answer is yes. We learned that at the Sustainable Construction Summit that brought together 7 keynote speakers and 250 executives, managers and decision makers. Co-organised by Azerbaijan Industrial Safety Association and PMD projects, key discussions focused on environmental protection and efficient resource use, urban planning trends and innovation in green construction. Experts agreed that apply sustainability principles in project management is the key matter at stake.
If we wouldn't set this balance between the construction and the sustainability, between the green sensitivity to the other segmentations of the real estate, we would have a nice, we wouldn't have a nice feature for all of us. So that's a mandatory, and that's one aspect of that question. Another aspect is when you make an investment to the real estate industry, it should be sustainable as well. Otherwise, you will lose money.
Sometimes green solutions in construction are so innovative that it feels like we're not building but creating a futuristic city. But the question is, can green construction be as strong as concrete?
Capitalization of real estate market in the world is around $380 trillion, where sustainable construction just takes only 0.1% of this value, which shows how much perspective is still there. So it shouldn't be only as a trend and as a kind of extra value or added value. The sustainable construction is the mainstream of future. So we have to invest. This is now the position where we have no other choice other than investing into the sustainable construction.
A Davos-style follow-up panel discussed the Sustainable Green Construction Declaration, where experts were keen to raise concerns and express their opinions. The companies that contributed to the development of the construction sector honoured with the Builders' Awards ceremony. The summit reaffirmed that sustainable construction is a shared responsibility shaping the future of urban development.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ.